The Shadow Beneath the Lake. It was a quiet town named Ravenshallow, built around an ancient black lake. Locals called it Mirror Lake because on still nights, the water reflected everything perfectly except people. No matter who stood before it, their reflection was always missing. When Clara Jennings, a 28-year-old photographer, arrived from New York to shoot the abandoned areas for a travel magazine, she didn't believe the legends. She had heard the stories from the old innkeeper how, long ago, a whole family drowned in the lake on a moonless night, and since then, the water had become cursed. But she laughed it off. "Ghosts don't exist," she said. That night, she walked alone toward the lake, her camera in hand. The wind was still, the forest silent. She crouched near the edge and clicked a few shots. Then she noticed something strange. A figure standing across the lake, motionless, pale, almost human. She zoomed in through her lens, but the viewfinder showed nothing. Lowering the camera, she gasped. The figure was gone. She turned to leave, but something moved beneath the water. Ripples spread, slow and deliberate, as if something huge was waking from a long sleep. Then a hand, thin, gray, dripping, reached out of the lake and slid back under. Clara stumbled backward, nearly dropping her camera. "It's just my imagination," she whispered, and hurried back to the inn. At midnight, she developed the photos on her laptop. Every picture looked fine, except one, the last one she took. In that image, her reflection was gone, but behind her, standing on the lake's surface, was a woman in a torn white dress, her face twisted and hollow-eyed. The next morning, the innkeeper looked pale when Clara showed him the picture. "That's her," he said quietly. "Eliza Moore. She drowned in 1932. They say anyone who photographs her disappears." Clara laughed nervously. "I'll be fine." But when she glanced at the mirror in the inn's hallway, her reflection was slightly delayed. It blinked half a second later than she did. That night, she woke to dripping sounds. The window was open, the curtain fluttering. On the floor, wet footprints led from the window to the edge of her bed. Her camera was on, lens pointing at her, recording. The screen showed a live feed, herself sleeping, but there was someone else in the frame, standing right behind her. Clara screamed and turned, but the room was empty. She snatched the camera and ran downstairs, bursting into the innkeeper's office. But he wasn't there. Only his chair was spinning slowly, wet footprints leading out toward the back door. The night outside was deathly quiet. She followed the prints to the lake. The moon hung low, its reflection glowing on the surface, and this time, her reflection was there, but it smiled, even though she wasn't. Her camera slipped from her hand into the water. The reflection's hand reached up, grabbed hers, and yanked her down with a violent splash. The water was freezing, suffocating. She tried to swim up, but something held her. Dozens of pale arms wrapped around her legs, dragging her deeper. In the darkness, she saw faces, the missing townsfolk, their eyes open, mouths moving silently. One of them was the innkeeper. When her lungs burned, a soft voice whispered underwater, "Now you belong to us." Her vision blurred, and her last breath escaped in a trail of bubbles. 3 days later, police found Clara's rental car near the lake. doors open, her belongings untouched. The only clue was her camera, floating by the shore, still recording. The last frame showed the lake perfectly still until a woman's pale hand reached out of the water and turned off the camera. Now, on cold, windless nights, travelers say the lake glows faintly, and if you look into it, you'll see everyone's reflection but your own. The town of Ravens Hollow was silent for weeks after Clara's disappearance. Tourists stopped coming. Locals whispered that the lake had taken another soul. The sheriff, Daniel Moore, knew the stories well because Eliza Moore, the woman from the legend, had been his great-grandmother. He didn't believe in curses, but deep down he always feared that one day the lake would call his name too. One rainy evening, Daniel sat alone in his office, studying the old police reports. Clara's camera footage played on loop. As the final seconds rolled, he noticed something strange, a reflection in the water that looked like him, but he had never been there. His pulse quickened. On the desk lay Eliza Moore's death certificate, but her body had never been recovered. The next morning, Daniel drove to the lake before sunrise. The fog was thick and unmoving. Birds refused to sing. Near the water's edge, he found something half buried. An old locket caked with mud. He opened it. Inside was a faded photo of Eliza holding a baby, with his own name scrawled on the back, Daniel. He stumbled backward, the world spinning. Suddenly, the surface of the lake rippled, though the air was still. A voice rose, soft, almost loving. "You finally came back to me." Daniel froze. A figure rose slowly from the water, her hair floating like black seaweed, her face both beautiful and broken. "Grandmother?" he whispered. The figure smiled, water pouring from her empty eyes. Blood calls to blood. Before Daniel could run, the ground beneath him turned slick and soft, as if the earth itself were breathing. Pale hands burst through the mud, grabbing his boots, dragging him toward the water. He fired his gun, but the echo vanished into the fog. The lake's surface swallowed the sound and him. Hours later, the townspeople found his patrol car still running, headlights pointing toward the water. His badge was on the ground, wet and cold. But something was different about the lake now. It reflected everything, including people. That night, the innkeeper's daughter, Abby, stood by the shore. She had seen Daniel leave earlier, but never return. The moon shimmered above the lake, and she noticed her reflection smiling faintly, even though she wasn't. "Clara?" she whispered. The reflection's lips moved back, perfectly timed. "Abby, come closer." A chill raced down her spine, but curiosity pulled her forward. She leaned over the edge, staring into the glassy surface. The reflection's eyes turned black, its hand rising through the water. Before she could scream, it grabbed her face and pulled. The lake rippled once, then went still. By morning, her footprints ended at the water's edge. Only her phone remained, recording. The final seconds showed a calm lake, the reflection of a woman standing where no one stood. Behind her, faint whispers echoed. "We're not beneath the water anymore. We're waiting above." Now, the people of Ravens Hollow avoid the lake entirely. Every mirror in the town has been covered, and no one goes out after midnight. But if you drive past Mirror Lake on a full moon night, you might see figures walking on the surface, searching, whispering, calling your name. And if you stop to look too long, your reflection might not come back with you.